Testing. Testing.
Testing. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Tony Lopez. I'm the Deputy Town Manager here for the town. I'd like to welcome all of you to our first, or our inaugural, open forum listening session for the residents here of the town of Miami Lakes. And this is going to be our first open forum. We're going to be focusing on two particular topics or two particular departments and their functions within our town. The first one tonight is going to be communications and public works. We are planning on holding two additional sessions, one to be held in July. That's going to cover parks and finance and budget, which is timely for that time period. And again, we're going to hold one in November, which will deal with the police department and the building department. So again, for tonight, our main focus is going to be communications and public works. And before we begin, I just want to go ahead and have those two department heads introduce themselves, and then I will also be passing it on to the council members here also that are with us tonight.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Claricel de Cárdenas, Communications and Community Affairs Department. Anything related to sending messages to the community, informing them of our initiatives and projects is run through my office. I also handle all of the committees and the special events together with my team, Victoria Vega, Ail Pastora, and Jonathan Hill.
Thank you. Carlos Acosta, Director of Public Works. Of course, my department, pretty much as you walk out of your house and you walk over the sidewalk into the road, everything from the sidewalk that's handled by my department, street lights, repair, maintenance, roadway repairs, drainage projects, the big stormwater program that is going on is being run by the department, street sweeping operations, litter and debris, canal maintenance, and a lot of the other more things that we do, but those are the kind of the major ones. Of course, capital projects is a main focus of the department, so I'm here to answer any questions that you may all have. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, Luis Guiaso. I'm one of the council members here. Just great to be here, participate. I'm glad to see that this is something that you've advocated for, Bonnie, and I'm glad that we're able to get this off the ground. You know, my vision is that we have more of these, maybe not even the so structured ones, maybe even at parks, informally. You know, this is kind of part of the job that we signed up for, which is to listen to you, you know. And we have different opportunities to do that, whether it be through social media. But this is a more relaxed setting where maybe we can have a conversation, and, you know, we're here to listen. So thank you so much for making this something that you've believed in so much that we made it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. Councilwoman Marilyn Ruano, I know that most of you that are in the room know me. I'm really happy to be here tonight and to have a real dialogue, right? Sometimes we sit on the dais and we hear your questions and we're itching to answer you, but we can't because it's not part of our rules. So it's going to be great to have a real conversation with everyone here, and I don't know if we have anyone that's joining us via Zoom.
Thank you, and I'm Councilman Tony Fernandez. I definitely echo the sentiments of my colleagues, and I think when you're up on the dais and you're listening to public comments, you know, we typically take notes, and you know, but sometimes there might not be an item germane to, you know, to giving a response, and so we try to follow up, but it's not as good as being able to have, you know, that conversation, and, you know, things come up subsequent to that, right? So definitely excited to hear what you guys have to say, and, you know, finding solutions to improving services.
And again, tonight our goal is to be very informal, have an open discussion and dialogue. Anything that's on your mind in respect to any of these areas that are here covered tonight, the floor is, in essence, yours as the residents of the town. So whoever wants to go ahead and...
Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity. And I know you were kind enough to even change a date, because I think originally it was going to be tomorrow night, and I have not one but two different meetings tomorrow night, one being my band practice, but I'll miss that to go to the other meeting. So I'm really appreciating that you did this. I was a little bit misinformed, my own fault. I just thought that we could ask questions on any topic, and I see it's more directed to certain areas. Yeah, I have 5 different things, but the first one really would go to Mr. Acosta, because it's just what you said that you're in charge of. On Lewis Road, we had a sinkhole that was about 3 feet by 2 feet and quite deep come in the pavement. And we reported it 2 or 3 times. Finally, after a few months, some people came out and did a temporary fix with macadam. It was all bumpy, but it was, at least you wouldn't fall in the hole and break a leg. But it has never been done permanently. And now that macadam is starting to wear away, and you can see another little hole there starting. So I think somebody forgot to come and finish the job. So if you could do that. It's on Lewis Road, which is a short cul-de-sac road. My house number is 14770, and it's right at the edge of where my property ends, right by where a lamp pole is. So you'll see it if you come and look, and I think that needs to be fixed. The other thing, I didn't do it. I have a neighbor who is a building inspector for Dade County, not for us, and he claimed that he called. I don't know if he called the building department or who he called, but somebody did eventually come, but it wasn't right away. But it was a gaping hole for quite a long time.
A mechanism, like if you were to call us, the council, we would actually, you know, we have access to the app, and there's different mechanisms that actually show accountability of when the call was received, and that way he can track it, right? Because then he knows where the status is. If you're actually the person reporting it on the app, you get the updates, and you actually know who received it in town hall. So there's an accountability factor. So it's great. One of the ways that you can do that is let us know. You know, we'll call the department head. But another feature is one of the features, and you don't have to necessarily call the council. I think we're all accessible like that. But we also have an app, and I know sometimes people have difficulty navigating an app. But you can call it in. It's just there's accountability on that particular system, and things fall between the cracks as well. You know, it's humans, and there's you know, not all systems are perfect, but it's one way that we make sure that those issues are being addressed.
If I may.
I just wanted to add that sometimes things take a little bit longer because the funding isn't there. And so I always tell the residents, you know, sometimes it's not our departments, it's not our employees. Sometimes there's a long list of things, and I know sinkholes are like emergencies, right? But in other areas, there's a long list of needs, and we kind of get to them as we, the council, give the Public Works Department funding, and the Public Works Department moves on to fix those issues. So I know that I sometimes get, you know, phone calls, and residents will tell me, well, your Public Works Department is not doing their job, and I'll talk to Carlos, and he'll be like, yep, it's on the list, but I don't have money to fix it. So it's sometimes a funding issue also.
And I would add also that we outsource most of our services, right? So when there is a pothole or a sinkhole that it's small, that we could do it in-house, we have cold patches, so we'll go out there and put a cold patch temporarily. But if it's something else that needs heavy equipment, they need to saw cut the pavement, things like that, for those things, we have to go out to our vendor who is under contract. And so often what happens is we get reports of that, but it's not cost effective, right, just to bring a whole equipment to do a 2x2 patch and fix the hole. So we try to get as many of them around the town so that when we issue a work order, it's worth, you know, not, you know, it's cost effective for us and that contractor to leave whatever job he's doing to come here for. You know, he don't want to come here for $200, but he'll come here for $5,000, $6,000 work order. So sometimes it takes a little bit of time, but I'll look into that, your particular situation.
Yeah, I just, I don't want to discourage you from using technology to report these issues. Besides having the app, there's a web portal. It's miamilakesconnect.com. You don't need to download the app. You don't need to have a smartphone. You just enter that website, that web address in your web browser, and it'll provide you the fields to report these issues without necessarily having a smartphone and downloading the app.
I don't enjoy communicating by machine. It's just not in me. Here we have someone who is doing it like nothing. It's second nature. But I probably wouldn't do that. I would pick up the phone and call someone or send an email. I can at least do emails. But yeah. But whoever reported it, I believe what must have reported it to the building department. I'm just assuming. I'll tell you what my other issues were, and then the second one was, a neighbor told me that she has a very good friend who works, has a high-up job, is how she put it, in FP&L, and that FP&L told her that they were going to put all of our electrical wires underground, that Miami Lakes was next on the list, and it was going to be at their expense. Now, it sounds like a fairy tale to me because I know how we have been wanting that to happen for a long time. I just wondered if anyone here had heard anything about that. Not for free.
Well, I think, Carlos, I think FBL has been directed to do it by a time period across the state. But that time window is well extended into the future. So we're not on the top of that list just yet. Not to our knowledge.
Okay. I'll tell her to.
We need a microphone, otherwise people at home will not be able to.
Yeah. Okay, and the next thing, we had been through this. I think you were involved, Councilman Collazo, and I know I had spoken with Mayor Sid, and I don't know if the FAA was ever contacted or not, but my family has been so upset with the difference in the flight path that has happened within the last, I'd say, 6 to 7 years. Before that, and yeah, maybe 8 years. Before that, and we have lived here since 1974, all of the traffic for the 9 left runway there, which is the main runway, had a corridor that was very narrow, and you had to approach from 2 miles out directly in line with that corridor, with that runway, and come in that way. This kept the air traffic in one area that was more commercial here in Miami Lakes. Now, the FAA has opened that to a funnel shape. So now we have airplanes on final approach because we're near the end of the runway. They're on final approach, which means they're at a critical time and they're low, and they're coming right over our houses every day. And many of them at certain hours, like around 3:30 to 5, they're just one after the other. And I'm not so upset about the noise. I'm just worried about the safety issue because, as some of you know, my husband was a pilot, and his son was a pilot for Delta, a Czech pilot. He was also an F-16 pilot. My son has his glider's license, but my husband's daughter had taken flight lessons at Opelika, and she confirmed that they were told as students they could only go in and out straight. Now, that has changed, and the only way that it'll ever get fixed is if enough of authority figures, like our town council, would complain to the FAA and just say they have to narrow that approach. Because if they don't change it, evidently the tower tells me that they do not direct the pilots, and which I think is silly. Towers should direct the pilots and tell them what vector, but they don't.
I toured the airport a few years back, and I brought up that concern because it had been brought up to me, and I was told, and I was as confused as you are because I don't know anything about that, but I was told that the pilots have the discretion to choose how they're gonna come into the runway. It's for their safety, it depends on the wind, it's, you know, what they feel comfortable with, and so that we could not regulate how the pilots approach the runway. That's what I was told. I don't know
I know.
if that's, that
But
there's-
that's what the Opalaga Airport Tower people will say. But from a commercial pilot all of his life, my husband was, and his son as well, that's not true. They do have the jurisdiction, the tower, to tell the pilot what vector to use to come in on. The only reason the pilots are doing the broader approach is to save maybe a little bit of fuel or something if they're coming from the south somewhere and they have to come in, instead of coming straight up and then turning, they're coming in at an angle. And so it's supposed to shorten it for them. But it's that I just get so angry because I know they tell me the same story, and it's really not true. Pilots are always are always being told by towers how they can approach. And we know about the wind. If the wind is from one direction, you have to approach against the wind always. So, of course, we understand that, but that has nothing to do with what I'm saying. So,
I know last night, I believe the vice mayor raised the issue, and Susana, our town planner, gave an explanation of what changes have happened in the FAA to maybe explain some of the increased air traffic, especially over some of our areas. So I don't know if anybody can recap what Susana said, but the way she described it was very illustrative to me. It was almost like an upside-down wedding cake. I remember her referencing an upside-down wedding cake and how the airspace has now been changed, and those lower tiers may be creating a little bit more air traffic, a little closer to our residential areas,
yeah.
where that airspace is more for those smaller jets as opposed to the larger
Yeah.
commercial jets, which are stationed out of Fort Lauderdale and MIA. So she said that increased visibility of air traffic might be enhancing those complaints that we're receiving, but I think that was the issue the vice mayor brought forward, of increased air traffic. Like, why are we seeing more planes? Why are we seeing increased air traffic? Why are the planes lower? And she went into a little bit of detail, and that was kind of the reference that she gave. I don't know if you have anything else to expand from what she said.
Yep, that was definitely what I remember, and during my briefing, it was kind of like to keep the smaller jets lower, and then to expand the area higher for Miami International and Fort Lauderdale, and so it shouldn't have increased air traffic. What it did increase is us, noticing the aircraft, because now they're flying lower, right? So before they would probably take the same approach, it would just be higher when they would fly over us, and we wouldn't hear them, or inside our homes or whatever. But now they're definitely lower than they were, and particularly the smaller the smaller
and
aircraft.
that's much less safe. It is much less safe because that's a critical time anyway. And if any little like an engine goes or something at that low altitude, they're going to fall down right on the houses. And it's just so disturbing. And I think, too, the international airport approaches were changed so that we all know, if we've been aboard taking off, you usually go out east over the ocean. Well, they're having these planes turn and go up along the coastline over the cities, the built-up area. I don't understand it. I think something is wrong with the FAA to do this. I mean, why would they put traffic over populated areas instead of the water? I don't know.
You're bringing back memories of a former council member, Perdomo, who was an air traffic controller, and he would make sense of this very easily. He would tell me, you would just line up the planes one in a row, and so he was very well versed at this, and he would probably be the best person.
I just don't know if the FAA can be approached again and asked, but I doubt they'll cooperate. But I thought maybe we could try another official word coming to, please, it's too dangerous to have you over our homes all the time. The fourth thing I had to ask about was these waivers that have come out for the elderly whenever they go to a function now in the town, an activity. I haven't had it happen to me yet, but I will miss the activity because I don't think that's fair. I don't understand it. I haven't seen one. I've just heard about it. I think Martha Gonzalez spoke last night. So what is the thinking behind this, and is it for insurance purposes or something you're afraid? I don't understand why it was put in place.
Do you guys, do you want to respond on behalf of the department, or?
She doesn't have a mic.
The lawyers have told us we need to have those waivers signed. That's the answer. That's the answer that we were provided. You know, nobody likes foregoing their rights, right? Nobody likes giving up anything, especially when it's the right to sue other people. But indemnification is one of the things that almost everybody does as a risk mitigation tool, right? God forbid that something terrible happens to somebody at one of these events. The town is trying to indemnify themselves from the risk. And it depends. It depends on where the event is being held, right? Sometimes the companies that we're holding the events at have assigned these waivers as well, right? Indemnification. The Grahams don't want to be responsible if something happens because they're hosting one of our town events. So that is a risk management tool. It comes down from the legal department. I think it's kind of seamless on Eventbrite. Like, you sign up for these events online. You're not online. But for a lot of the individuals that sign up online, they do it online. And it's one of the things that Eventbrite has you check. Have you ever seen these check boxes? It's an opt-in, opt-out. When you sign up for anything electronic, you're usually saying, I agree to all these things. And you know what? It's your choice. Nobody is telling you to sign it.
Oh, but they won't let you in if you don't sign.
It's your choice.
To the activity. That's what
yeah.
I'm saying.
It really comes down to a personal choice.
I think when they had the Valentine event for the elderly, that's where some people were approached to sign these waivers. I was not approached to sign it, and I got in and sat down and nobody asked me. So, or if they did, I did it without even looking, but didn't know what I was signing. But I would not, I think, because the only waiver that I can think and that for sure that I signed was when I went to get the vaccine. And boy, did that make me worry. I didn't like the idea that it was so risky that I had to sign a waiver. And if I hadn't wanted to fly, I wouldn't have gotten it, the vaccine. But it's just, why, for example, on that Valentine's affair, it was in the Don Shula Hotel. Now, if I go into that hotel to have a meal or to have a drink at the bar or something, they're not going to make me sign a waiver, and I'm still the same old age. I could still have an accident. I don't understand.
So that's, right, so that was one of my questions at the Valentine event, right? There were individuals that hesitated to sign the waiver. There were some people that wanted their children to read it before they signed it because they didn't know what they were signing.
That's smart.
And it was my understanding that they stayed in the event even though they didn't sign the waiver, right? And the legal department has told me that this is a waiver that we've always had, that it's always existed. So some of our more frequent guests don't remember ever signing this waiver. So there's a little bit of controversy there. I agree with you, Bonnie. We have events all the time where we have thousands of people at the park. Nobody signs a waiver. We visit hotels all the time, and nobody signs a waiver.
They're just making the elderly do it. That's discrimination.
It's not just for the Elderly Affairs Committee, but it's more for organized events where there are people that you can tangibly count and you can see.
Oh, you mean so any age group that tries to go was going to get these same waivers?
Right. It's for other events as well, not just the Elderly Affairs.
So your activities was a little bit different, right? So we had our larger events like the Spring Fling. We wouldn't necessarily do a waiver for the entire event, but we had a petting zoo or something that has a higher level of risk. We would have them sign a waiver for those activities, and so we would, check them in, give them, some type of band or something identifying that they had signed the waiver, and then we let them in. Those pony rides and those things, can be dangerous, and so I think it's important for the parents to understand that there's a risk with it. Thinking back, neighborhood improvement, we would do it for the bike rides. I think, you know, that was, you know, but not necessarily. And I think that's where we kind of have to take a look at it, not necessarily for a banquet or something
and
like that.
I think that's where there's some
Yeah.
wiggle room, right? So it's not done for everything. As a resident, as a taxpayer, the more waivers we have, the less exposure we have to risk. And so limiting your exposure, well, that's what we try to do. And that's what the legal department tries to do, is limit your exposure.
I think it was because someone got the idea that just the elderly were having to do this.
No, and that's
now
not
when
the
we
case.
hear that other, you know, I
Right.
understand what you're saying about the risk involved. That I get.
And like the deputy manager said, for some of our organized, after school programs and things like that, there have always been
Okay.
waivers. Now, if there's someone that is unwilling to sign a waiver for whatever reason, I would definitely not alienate them from an event or exclude them in any way. I would, any committee that has someone that's adamant against signing a waiver, then I would definitely try to accommodate that person, especially in the Elderly Affairs Committee, where some people just, they're just not ready to read it or just unfamiliar with what they're reading. So those are things, like Councilmember Fernandez said, that we can work around.
Okay, thank you. And the last thing, that I was going to question about was very important to me and to many of my friends. When you have issues coming up that will increase in any way, even if it's 2 cents more, that will increase our taxes, and it's an issue like the Optimist Park field, we feel it is extremely unfair to open the voting of whether that should go forward or not to the public, to all the residents that live in this town. It only affects the property owners. So it affects their budget, their pocket. So they should be the ones who vote on it, and not the general public who lives here, because it just seems horrible that so many people should have a say over my tax bill, And I don't know. I just think that has to be done, the voting has to be done on those issues in a way that allows just the people whose budget is affected to be the voters, not just everybody that lives in this town, because we have way more renters than we do property owners, as far as I'm told. Yeah, so I don't know what can be done about that, but there are ways to have just the property owners vote.
I echo what you're saying, and I've argued that on the dais, and my colleagues have made very good points, saying that the renters, this cost is passed along to the renter, and so the renters eventually pay that cost as well. So I feel, and I've had many conversations with people about this, I would prefer to have a different mechanism, and I understand what you're saying, because a person that has purchased their home has made a long-term commitment to the town, and they understand that if their taxes go up, then the property value, will go up or down depending. So there's much more vested interest if you're a homeowner. But we don't really have a mechanism to do that. And I remember Councilmember Fernandez once bringing up the fact that we all get elected by people that are renters too. So that's just the way our election process works. I understand you, and I agree. I would hate, and I always use my cousin as an example, right? And my cousin, he's like my brother. I love him to death. He moved to Miami Lakes, rented an apartment. In an election year, he voted on everything that was on the ballot. And come January, they raised his rent, and he moved out. He said, forget it, I'm moving out because the rent in Hialeah is cheaper and Miami Lakes is too expensive. So he made decisions for all of us and then left. So I completely understand your point, but I don't really think that we have a way around that.
No, and to kind of go back to the point that I made before. So you have to remember the rental properties, right? It's, and obviously the biggest landlord in the town is the Grams. Love the Grams, but if we raise taxes, the Grams are not going to cut into into their losses, and you know, the Grams are going to raise the rent and pass that along to the renters. So the renters will pay that tax increase, whether it comes, you know, directly to us or by way of their landlord. Something that's very, very important to note is, as homeowners, right, and especially as long-term homeowners in this community, we have certain protections because of the Save Our Homes Amendment, where our property values, our properties are assessed way below the market value of those properties. The residential, the properties that are rented out are not protected under homestead exemption, right? And so they can go up, if property values rise, they can go up as much as 10% every year. So a comparable, you know, property that say one of us is living in versus somebody that a renter is living in, they proportionally pay a lot higher taxes than we are. For the same unit, their portion of the tax bill is a much higher tax burden. So I think because of that, I think it's kind of unfair. I think we have to listen to everybody. I think the mechanism that we have one system of voting, right? And that's one person, one vote, and that's kind of where we're at. So maybe there are, you know, other mechanisms that we can look at to gauge whether the public is for or in favor of something. But I think for matters as serious as a bond referendum or something like that, it has to be a vote of the entire electorate in the town.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Tony touched on an issue that I think there's people that pay taxes that aren't even represented and don't even have the opportunity to vote, which is the business community, right? A lot of warehouses, a lot of people that own property, commercial property, not the Grams, right, as the only ones. It's just a lot of businesses here that really pay for a service, right? And they receive municipal services just like everybody else, but they may never step foot in that park, right? But they're paying towards and contributing towards our tax base, which in effect keep your taxes lower.
Well,
We're studying annexing, right? A big commercial area. Again, this is Councilman Dieguez bringing forward an item to raise your taxes, annexing some commercial areas which are known as donor communities, or communities that maybe we don't have to increase a lot of the level of service, but they would help reduce the tax base for the rest of the residents. So, you know, I've heard the mayor refer to it as a regressive system, right? Or a tax that maybe isn't the most fair, right? And when you look at it, some people pay very, very little for a comparable. Derek is probably paying 2 times what you pay in taxes.
Oh, yeah.
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 And it's probably a comparable home.
Yes.
Right? So it's a regressive
all
system.
of the people who moved in later have
That's
paid
what,
way more.
that's what Councilman Fernandez was saying, that it's not necessarily a fair system, right? And it's a regressive.
Well, if you're speaking of fairness, just that issue about the park, which is a separate issue from what I'm talking about with the voting, but it just seems so unreal that people are thinking of spending all that money to fix a place that is not owned by us. And it boggles my mind. And some people are really upset about that, and I'm one of them, and my son is as well, you know. We want minor improvements, like the drainage should be taken care of. You know, maybe some better dugouts, a few bleachers here and there, the movable kind, and small ones, and maybe some shade trees and another bathroom and a fountain. But to make the sport complex the way it's programmed, for all those millions of dollars, even we hear all different figures, maybe it's around 20 million now, and it's not our park, it's not our property. I mean, it just seems ludicrous. And I guess we're afraid that putting the vote out to all the registered voters, there are a lot of younger people who think, oh, that sounds cool. You know, that sounds like a good deal.
I have Hope Reynolds on the phone, and she wanted to make a comment with regards to the voting. So I'm gonna allow her to speak through the microphone. Go ahead, Hope.
Yeah, hi. First of all, thank you for this great opportunity for us to speak with you. we are not there because everything that's happening has me so overwhelmed. I really rather stay home. But when I heard the explanation given with regards to the Save Our Homes, the 3%, that is in order to protect us from being able to age in our homes. And the cost of our homes cannot increase more than 3% per year. But if we continue to allow utility taxes, franchise fees, and every other way to get into our pocket, then that little percentage continues to decrease and decrease and decrease, and one day you're going to simply just take us out of our homes. So when Bonnie Stintron says that we, property owners, should be the only ones to vote, there is a way to do it. It's just simply going to the property appraiser's office, find out who is the property owner on record, and those persons get to vote on whether we pay for something. In other words, we amended our governing documents by following that procedure. We actually did the revitalization of our governing documents by following that procedure. So it all does exist. The thing is that it needs to be worked out, and it needs to be worked out to the benefit of the people of the town of Miami-Lakes. So it is imperative that you protect those that have properties, and the reason for the 3% recapture rule was to protect us. It is in the Constitution of the state of Florida, but we continue to find ways around it in order to continue to pay for things that we do not need. So I hope you do understand the process, and I hope you do understand what it is that we are trying to say. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Hope. Thank you.
Summarize. Summarize more.
All right, we can look into the possibility of that process. I don't know of any either, but I guess we can look into it.
I think it'd be interesting to see, right? Because if you're talking about being equitable, then what that would undertake would be a situation where we take the vote of only those that own property. Then I think we would only tax those that own property, right? Because I don't think we would want to tax the entire town based on a subset of the few, right? If everybody's going to be paying the tax, we should hear from everybody. If we would want to limit it to property owners, it may be a situation where then only property owners are going to pay the tax. And if that is the case, I guarantee you whatever a bond referendum would be, you would pay 12 times that.
I remember there was a vice mayor here, I believe it was Nelson Hernandez, actually started going down that path, right, with user fees. Say, hey, look, let's actually reduce a lot of what people pay through millage, right? And then as people use the services, turn it or convert it into a user fee. I remember him almost being decapitated on the dais. It was a user fee. It would be basically you were taxing depending on what you used, right? So if you used the park, you would pay for the park. You go to senior events, you pay for the senior events, but not everybody pays for and that kind of goes back to the business community, right? They're grossly underrepresented, right? They're business owners that not necessarily living here, but they own big either land or they own big commercial properties, and they're probably not getting the value their donor community. So trying to find an equitable, and that's really what we're talking about. What is equal? What is fair? What's equitable, right? And I hear Hope loud and clear. My mom was one of those individuals. She had to make a business financial decision. Her taxes and her home were eating her alive. She had to downsize, right? And that's a personal choice that she made, right, to be able to survive her senior years. She was not able to save our homes, right? Mm-hmm. But it's a very tough issue. And I remember a lot of thought has gone into it. It's a regressive tax. It's not the most fair system. And I have not seen it replicated, at least what Hope is asking us to do. Maybe it is, and maybe we can look into it, right? Like I said, I didn't hear of a TIF up until the other day, and maybe that's a financing instrument that we can look at. But I remember when the vice mayor proposed it. Tony, you were on the council. How was that received at the time?
I remember that vividly because that was one of the days that we didn't fit in these chambers. It was, I mean, there was bus loads of, and I remember specifically the senior community because they were the one that used, exactly, they had to pay for the programs. I think that there was even a parking fee. There was a lot of things that they had to pay to use the program to remove that from taxes, right, from our taxes. And I remember that it was not well received, not well received.
One of the other things that's important, right? So we talk about the system, and we talk about, and probably because it's the biggest lump sum that we see is property taxes, right? And so that's what we associate with the money that goes to our municipality is property taxes. Well, more than 100% of the property taxes that we collect as a municipality fund our police services. So in theory, our police contract is 50, 51, 52% of our budget. It's more than we collect in ad valorem taxes. The rest of the town runs on all the other taxes, the pass-throughs that come from the state, from the county, from all the other gibberish is essentially what funds everything else we do in the town. It would almost be interesting to, lower our town millage to 0 and then list out municipal police services, 2.34 mils, and that's it. Town of Miami Lakes, 0. It'd almost be interesting to list them out separately, and I think with some of the things happening at the county level with the whole movement to an elected sheriff and bifurcating what the police department does and the elected sheriff and the contract that we have with the county, that very well may be something that comes to fruition. It's certainly something that's being talked about elsewhere in the county where people that live in UMSA will see a rate for their county services, a rate for their UMSA services, and a separate rate directly to the sheriff's office, right? So it'd be an interesting situation.
When Alex Ray was here, and I think Tony, you were privy to some of those conversations, I even, it was one of the first things that I wanted to take a look at. Could you actually just like there's a fire fee, right, for your fire services, could you just have, like what you just said, zero it out, right? Zero out just the fire fee, just the police, but you couldn't do that. I remember we looked at that, and it was one of the things that we couldn't do. Fire can do it, but you couldn't do it with police services.
Okay, well, they were the things that I wanted to ask. And of course, I mean, the bridges, we spent so much time on that last night. But I just wanted to add those structural analysis reports seem like they're very, very important because I mean, that's why I wrote that email to you all today, to get everyone together so that they all hear everything at the same time. And I don't know if people realize on that side how structurally unsound the bridges are. So I don't know what they're thinking. I mean,
They don't realize it, and if we told them, they wouldn't care. That's the reality, because no one thinks about safety until something bad happens. So if we were to tell them now the bridge shouldn't open because it's unsafe, they wouldn't hear it.
yeah, but you're not, I think there are regulations where you cannot send vehicles on places
Correct,
that are
but because we don't own the bridge and we don't inspect the bridge, and it's just not, it's not within our jurisdiction.
Well,
So-
FDOT owns the bridges.
Correct.
And they would know, they would see that
Well, their
report.
report says that the bridge is in poor condition.
Yeah.
So the report is public, and anybody that wants to look at it can. The county can look at it, and City of
But
Hialeah can
aren't
look
there
at it.
laws, now, as I told you, my neighbor is a building inspector for Dade County, and he told me that there was a portion of the parking garage at Dadeland Mall, I don't know if it was the 6th floor or what it was, but it was a whole floor that was closed, and no one was allowed in there because they found it was structurally unsound, and they were afraid it would crumble if too many cars were in there. So they closed it. They weren't allowed to use it. So I'm assuming that if a bridge is structurally unsound, people
been-
aren't allowed to use it.
We've been told that they get inspected regularly, and inspected every 2 years, and that the bridge is safe enough for what it's being used today,
Oh,
right? Because
Which it isn't
they
being
have to
used.
inspect it because it's on top of vehicular traffic.
yeah.
I don't know how it changes if the bridge is open to vehicular traffic, because then there's going to be weight on the bridge.
Yeah.
There could be a traffic jam on the bridge.
Imagine
mean,
a couple of fire engines
There
going
could
over
be a
the
couple of
bridge.
fire engines on the bridge. So at that point, I mean, it's a valid question. It's a valid argument. We were in the county commission meeting, I believe, last week.
Yeah, it's next Tuesday.
Right. Well, the meeting that you and I were in, I believe it was last week, and Commissioner Pepe Diaz said that the bridge was safe to open to vehicular traffic. I don't know where he gets that information. Maybe he has a report that we don't have. The only report that I've seen is the one that's online that says condition poor and rating is 4 out of 9.
And who's
So
responsible?
I wouldn't drive
if-
on something that's
If
rated
there
4 out
ever
of 9.
were an accident where it collapsed, who's responsible for the damage?
Not the town of Miami Lakes.
No? Okay. At least that.
Certainly not, and with a 4 out of 9, I hope at a minimum they make everybody sign a waiver before they drive over.
So thank you all. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time.
Hi, Hector Aleman. My questions are actually for Public Works. I think, I've communicated with you via email. I think you know my email, and Mr. Acosta. Questions that I have, just since I'm glad that you're here, is I know that I spoke with Mr. Santos, and with issues of the 170th Street, I know that the county's Miami-Dade Water and Sewer Department are the one that are doing the water main or force main installation. But unfortunately, those contractors are notorious for leaving very poor finish asphalt. So my question is, have they been able to reach to the contractor there? Because the thing is, the driving condition on 170th Street is very poor. As a vet, you really have to avoid those dips. They should have, when they lay the force main, they should have been already finished the final course and leave it level or mill and resurface that entire area. So I was just wondering what the county's going to do on that. If they're going to, how long will it be before they proceed with finishing it?
Yeah, I know your emails. We've interacted via email a couple of times, and I've spoken with Omar on this. We have talked with the county staff that are responsible for overseeing the contractor. We have spoken with the contractor. Many times they have gone out there and have made some fixes, really not to my satisfaction.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not a town project, so, I mean, we get to the county, we get on the contractor, and at some point, there's only so much we could do, and we continue to remind them, and, they go on fix here and there. But, all I could do right now is continue to tell the county, you have a standard for trench restoration. Make sure your contractor is abiding by that.
Question, on 170th Street, on the center line of the road, the south part, which is on the Miami Lakes part, is that Miami Lakes or is in the northern part of the unincorporated? At one time I heard that the center line was a division between the county's jurisdiction and Miami Lakes jurisdiction. Is that still
That's correct. The center line of that road, half of it is, the south side is Miami Lakes jurisdiction.
right?
And then the north side is Miami-Dade County
Right.
jurisdiction.
So I guess with that question, a quarter of them. So I guess my question will be, in that case, since that part is in the town of Miami Lakes, the trench that they built, don't we have any say in telling them how, that they need to correct it instead of waiting through the county? That's just the question that I have.
Yes, and they do have a public works permit with us.
Okay.
And we have our own inspectors that are going out there and making our own inspections, and we're documenting all this.
Right.
Before the contractor does anything, we're going to be out there ensuring that this is restored properly, at least on our side.
Right.
that all the bike path and all that has been impacted. It's resodded. You know, we've already notified the contractor they have to clean the drainage system completely before they head out. So on our side, through our public works permit that we have with them, we're going to make sure that those things are corrected
Okay.
before the final seal on that project.
Yeah, I guess it's a very widely used road, and you know, it's. I know that I've seen cars actually go on the opposite end to avoid hitting that part, because it is very bumpy. Thank you for that answer. The other question I have is, I noticed that the utility contractors are doing a lot of marking in the Royal Oaks community, and I believe one of them said that they're installing the fiber optics, which I spoke with one of them. The other thing is that in the future, my understanding is that the town is going to do a drainage improvements for those areas of Royal Oaks. I know that those drainage systems are probably almost 40 years old. So the question I have there is, due to sea level rise and climate change, are they considering the future, the water tables that will be higher, and how would that impact the drainage system, the new one that it will be putting in? Because the roads have a certain elevation, and you know, you have to deal with the heads. So that was one of the questions. The other thing is that, unfortunately, when the developer did the roadway elevations, especially in front of my house, they didn't use the 0.3% slope to prevent the bird laugh. And every time it rains, I end up getting, instead of going to the low point, which where the storm sewer is, it stays in my front house. I have to sometimes come with a broom and force it to go to the thing. So I was just wondering, when you're doing the survey and you're currently doing the spot elevations, if they're going to be able to do something in those areas that have those conditions to tweak them to prevent that in the future. So that was the questions that I had.
Okay, so I'll try to hit all of them. I'll try to hit all of them. Okay, so the design is going to assume the water table as conservative as possible.
Okay.
I mean, I think in the last stormwater master plan, we looked at the consultant that did the master plan up. They looked at, okay, what happens if we leave the groundwater elevation where it's at? What happens if it goes half a foot? What happens if it goes 12 inches high?
Mm-hmm.
And we had a table, we had a cost estimate, and it came up to like, I don't know, I remember exact number, but I think if the water table was assumed to be 1 foot higher, that will have 50% increase in the construction cost. Mm-hmm. So it's a balance between, right? I mean, where are we at today with, and what we can, you know, reasonably expect in the future. But we're doing the best that we can to put a drainage system in place to address the flooding. Mm-hmm. We've had many successes, at least with the ones that we've done on West Lakes. We recently completed the 83rd Place Drainage Improvement Project. That street, which is south of 162nd, you got 162nd and 83rd, that used to flood really bad, and we did some improvements there recently. And I've spoken with one of the residents there and say, hey, you had the recent storm events now, and he said no flooding at all. Right. So, you know, it is working right now with the elevations that we're assuming. Some of the roads in Royal Oaks, definitely over time, they're not crowned, right? I mean, when they build those, they have a 2% nicely crowned. Mm-hmm. With time, those roads, through settlement and all that, then you have the flat surfaces. What we're doing with the drainage project is, as much as possible, when they come and paved, we'll account for extra asphalt to have the contractor, as much as possible, crown the road back to where it needs to be, so at least it drains off.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying with the 2%. So what I'm talking about is the longitudinal slope, not the,
yes.
That's the one that is sometimes an issue with the valley gutters. They have left the valley gutters very flat, and that's nothing with you, because this was done 40 years ago.
Sure.
But now that the timing is coming, I guess some of these things will probably be needed to be looked at.
One of the challenges there, and we're addressing this with the drainage projects, is reconstruction of the valley gutters, right? Mm-hmm. So when this was developed, those trees were like 2-inch diameters. Right. Now all these roots have lifted all the valley gutters. And we're trying to address the most critical ones, because if we end up replacing the entire valley gutter, is a road reconstruction project. Right. So we're trying to hit the worst spots here, and then eventually, which we do on a regular basis with the funds that we have allocated, we go out and repair valley gutters throughout the year with the funds that we have on our operating budget.
Right.
But we're certainly trying to address those cases as well.
And unfortunately, this is something that I've seen is they have put, when they did the designs originally, they put the storm drains right next to trees. And some of those oak trees now are 40 years old. The roots have gone into them. It really has damaged probably the French drains that are there. So yeah, there's a lot of things that you have to work against. What was done, I would say, not properly drainage design. But yeah, that's just my point that I just wanted to bring up. And thank you for. I'm glad that they're doing that because some of the systems there are pretty old already. And foreseeable future, you say that maybe the drainage improvement will probably be within 5 years, or
The drainage improvements on that area,
Right.
We expect that in the next 5 or 6 years, all those projects will be completed. I mean, we have projects under the stormwater bond program and then we have additional projects that are going to be done through the American Rescue Plan, which the council allocated that money specifically for drainage projects.
Right.
And actually, the first project went out for bid today,
yeah.
and we'll be hitting construction pretty soon.
No, that's pretty
And we
quick.
have, I think, another 15, 20 projects under design. So as soon as those designs start getting, out the door, we're going to see a lot of construction activities, and our goal is 5 or 6 years, all that is done and completed.
Yeah, between the design and the contracting proposal, that usually that's a fair time.
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Do you have any questions? Do you have any questions?
Good evening, everyone. I just want to say I want to commend all of you guys. I think this is very important for government to host forums like this. I think it's been pretty successful. I hope more people would have known about it. I think this is a great opportunity for people to come out here, talk to you guys. There's no rules of procedure. You guys can answer questions which you typically can't during public comments. So I would have hoped to see more people here, considering a lot of people go to public comments to complain or ask questions. I would have thought that they would have come here, but maybe next time. But I commend all of you guys on this great experience. I think that it's definitely important that we keep on doing things like this, and I'll come to the next one again.
Just to echo what the young man said, I think that's an excellent thing what it's doing. Basically, government is for the people and by the people. And I think that this forum that we're doing, I've worked in government all my life, so I know what it is. So it's a good thing that, to be able to open this up and just hear it out from the elected officials and also from the designers and directors. So it's a good thing, and I'm glad that this is being done.
Hi everyone, as most of you know me, Josh Rios. I'm actually not a Miami Lakes resident, but I love Miami Lakes. People open their arms for me, and I feel like family here in Miami Lakes. I'm actually a Doral resident, but we actually had a YATF meeting. That's why we're both here. And I worked in the school board, so we had a school board meeting today. But real quick, I actually do have a question. Since I am part of the school board, I work for the school board. I'm very involved there for quite a time, and I know you guys have the whole thing with the Optimist Park, with the deal leasing it from the school board. Can you go into a little bit more detail for me? Because as someone who trying to get their mind around, why has nothing really, besides having a lease agreement? I know you guys want to invest in the park, yet a lot of residents say want to refrain from investing since it's not really owned by the town. I want to know, the intricacies of the deal, and just trying to get my mind around what do you have in place right now with the school board and with your town, with the Optimist Park.
I'll take that one. So at yesterday's meeting, in fact, we moved to approve a draft of the of the latest joint use agreement. So we have an existing joint use agreement, I think expires in a few years, which lets us use the park in the afternoons, and on Saturdays we maintain the park, and the school board gets to use it during the day for any PE uses that they have. That's essentially the agreement that we've had since the beginning of time. 2001, exactly, since the beginning of our existence, right? So the change is it's the second amendment to the joint use agreement, and the biggest part of the agreement, I think the part that should give everybody some relief, is the duration of the agreement is 60 years, right? It's a 40-year initial term with 2 10-year renewal options. So the idea is, for those that might be worried that we're gonna make all these improvements to the park and we don't own the park, right? The park is not going anywhere for 40 years, right? And it's probably not going anywhere for 60, but at least 40 for sure. And 40 is way longer than any of the improvements that we're gonna pay to do that park. Whatever we're going to, right now we're sitting in a situation where we have to completely reconstruct the park because the park is over 40 years old and nothing has been done to it for over 40 years, right? In 40 years, the bad, and I work in IT, right? And so, in when you look at technology, one of the frightening things is the second you implement a new piece of technology, you have to start thinking about when you're going to replace it. 4 years down the line, 5 years down the line, right? Everything has a life cycle, and so the $25 million of improvements, if it is that number that we're going to do, 40 years from now, there's going to be another group of people in this room talking about a $300 million, bond to reconstruct Optimus Park, right? It's kind of like if you're into Back to the Future, it's kind of the same thing where it's at the beginning it's the grandson, and then it's the same thing, right? So the improvements that we're gonna make to the park are not gonna last, maybe not gonna last 40, and definitely not gonna last 60 years. So the biggest part is it's locked in. It's for us for 60 years. If we didn't have that option, right, and we had to go out on the private market and buy that amount of land to build the park, we'd be looking at conservatively in today's market somewhere between $60 and $80 million, right? So that's a budget buster. That's 3 years of our entire budget, right? So the fact that we're getting this land from the school district for 60 years, just on account that we're going to maintain it, which if it were our own park, we'd have to maintain it too, is a good deal, right? We're not paying them rent, and they also get to benefit from the park because they get to use it during the day while the kids at Miami Lakes Middle are there, and they're going to be able to use it for intramural or interscholastic games between other schools. That's one of the things that's built into the agreement. So that's really the big meat and potatoes. The rest is all lawyery stuff that the tons of indemnification stuff and waivers and who pays for this and what when something bad happens. But the biggest part is that, right? We get the use of the park, 60 years, no rent. We maintain it. We pay for the improvements, and so I don't know if you have any other questions. Okay.
I wanted to ask you a question. Since you're at the district, what are the conversations there? Like, what are the feelings on the side of the school board, right? Like, are they happy with our agreement? Are they? No one talks about it. Was here. So you heard it here for the first time. All Right, I know that they tackle a lot of things on a daily basis, so there's just so many parks and so many schools and. I'm sure.
I was going to leave, but I heard what you were saying about the park. I don't understand what you mean by maintenance over the years, like it becoming decrepit or bad. I mean, I do understand about the small structures that are there, like the dugouts and the bathrooms, things like that. But the maintenance of the grass, which is what it is, it's all grass, has been perfect. I mean, those, no matter when you go by, any time of the year.
We spend, Bonnie, about $600,000 a year on that maintenance.
Well,
so it's not free.
No, but I mean, it's not that it's degenerating and getting in horrible condition, as long as it's being maintained the way it is. That I don't understand why it has to be enhanced with what? Shrubbery and more doodads on it? I don't get it.
No, I think. Whoa! I just pulled a Councilmember Alvarez. No, I think you hit when you went down your list of things that needs to be done. I think the first one that you hit upon is the most important: drainage. Unfortunately, drainage can't happen. Like, we don't have a trained group of gophers that can go in there and do all the drainage beneath the grass, right? So to really achieve the level of drainage that's needed to keep the fields dry, the entire area needs to be bulldozed, raised, and then areas need to be created to retain water. And so that's a full right? That nothing on the surface of that field is going to survive. It's a huge earthwork project. If I remember correctly from the construction estimate, just the earthworks portion of it is like $5 or $6 million, right? And so $5 or $6 million, and the end result of that is a big, empty, ungrassed pile of dirt, right? Now you have to do irrigation, which is kind of funny that you're talking about drainage and irrigation, right? So first you got to make sure you don't have too much water, and then you have to make sure you have enough water. But irrigation, you have to turf it, you have to redo the lighting, you have to redo the, all of the surfaces, and then some of the improvements that have been added, the courtyard, that extra concession stand.
Keep in mind, and I'll give you the other side of the coin to that, right? For me, my concern is the future. We can put 10 million, we can put 20 million, we can put $30 million into that park. That is something that we are going to own eventually. I'm hoping that it's not a 40-year agreement. I'm hoping that it's a 100-year agreement. I'm hoping that the park belongs to us for use, not belongs, but that we have a joint use agreement forever, because it's for the greater good of the community, right? That means that we will be responsible for maintaining it for a long time. So in 20 years, when something breaks, we have to fix it. When the air conditioners break, we have to fix them. When the bathrooms break, we have to fix them. When there's a hole, we have to make everything that we build with the $20 million, we have to maintain it. And when it breaks, we have to build it again. And so for me, the reason why I wanted a smaller project, and I wanted it just to be a local park and not a regional park. And I mean, when I hear regional, it kind of rubs me the wrong way, because the dollars are not regional. So if the region wants to use the park, then come join us and fund it, right? And that was something that Councilmember Collazo brought up when we met with Mayor Levine Cava, right? We're more than happy to host multiple municipalities and the northwestern quadrant of the county, but we would like some dollars to be able to attach to that, right? Because my constituency shouldn't be responsible for creating a sports complex for the region. So for me, the price tag in my mind, and perhaps because I'm an accountant and I think of the life expectancy of things and the replacement cost of things, for me, the dollar just keeps increasing in my head. So I'm not comfortable with a large scale project like that for that reason. We spend money on this park on a yearly basis, and for the last 20 years, everyone says, you haven't done anything to the park, you haven't done anything to the park. We do. We do, we maintain it, and we spend $600,000 every year on the park. So it's not that we're ignoring it, it's not that we're not maintaining it. We are, but a project like this, unfortunately, $1 million doesn't buy you anything. $5 million doesn't buy you anything. What Councilmember Fernandez said, not even digging it up is $5 million. So it's a humongous price tag, but I just want the residents to know that, I mean, this is gonna go on the ballot for a vote, and that's just the way that it's gonna happen, but I want the price tag in everyone's mind to be realistic. Because once we venture into this thing, just last night we were talking about whether or not we needed parking spaces at the dog park. A few years ago, we didn't have a dog park. Now we have a dog park. We just had to vote to put benches in the dog park because now we need benches. We had to resod the dog park because now the grass is dead. And now we need parking at the dog park. So when we build something, it's an expense forever. And it needs replacing and it needs maintaining. So that, to me, that the dollar signs, right, we already use it. So if we keep it simple, we could continue to maintain it for what we spend now, but otherwise it's just going to become a humongous project that is going to fall on our tax dollars, in our pocket, and it's going to be enjoyed by a vast majority of individuals that don't live here, because currently the park is enjoyed by many people, and that's wonderful, and I'm not against that, and I'm not territorial. I don't want people to not visit Miami Lakes or not participate in our sports, but the reality is that when it affects your pocket, it's our taxpayers that I'm concerned about. So, it'll be on the ballot and we'll have tons of time to campaign for it or campaign against it or whatever we want to do. But I just want people to keep in mind that the price tag, it extends well into the future, and we're going to have, tons of time to talk about sinking funds and how to replace things, and it's just going to be a lot higher than we imagine.
I'm an end user now, and I have a completely different perspective than what I did when I first started on the council. I have a lot of the sticker shock that Councilwoman Ruano kind of, because when I started, I remember that project being $5 million, and now it's kind of grown, it's ballooned, right? Because inflation, right, there's been inflation. There's also been a lot of revisions, right? That park went from a very simple type of facelift to maybe probably the higher end of what we're looking at. I mean, now we have a collegiate field, right? And some of the heartburn that I had on the JUA was really bringing an amenity that wasn't for our current end users, right? That we were really trying to attract universities. We're trying to build a field for the high schools. But that's the give and take, right? The JUA was designed because we now have assurances for 60 years, right? So it gave me some heartburn, and that was basically my comments yesterday at the meeting, and I gave the example of Olivia Babis, right? And you guys went to the council with us to, nobody happened to ask the disability community, how would this impact you if we took away straws, right? And that's always been my focus, what is the end user what's that experience gonna be, right? So my advocacy has always been, ask the Optimus Park, ask the people who are currently using that park, and the end users, right now, at least a lot of people that are there at the park, because they're the end users, they want the improvements. What I'm hearing, though, from a lot of the people that live here, is they may not. The good thing is it's going to go up to a vote, right? The good thing is it's going to be voted on by the people, and the people will decide. I can tell you one thing, where all of us stand united, and regardless, now I'm not speaking to the price. I'm speaking to the fact that we all believe something needs to happen at that park. That park has been, I would say, I'm not going to say neglected, because the reality is, we do the best that we can with the resources that we're given. But when you're an end user and you have the opportunity to maybe visit some of the other parks, you see that product that we have there, while you see it as beautiful, compared to maybe some of the other amenities that are at some other parks, it's not up to that level, right? So again, you're speaking to somebody who's a biased end user, because I'm on those fields 4 to 5 days a week, right? And it's a different perspective, right? So, it's changed a little bit. Again, my experience was sticker shock at first, right? And I'm still having sticker shock, and I still don't know if it's something that I can afford, right? But again, I'm an end user, right? Everybody that lives here is going to have the opportunity to weigh the pros and the cons. Again, going back to Josh Diegues' item, and what the rest of the council has kind of proposed, right? Every one of us is going to go out there, receive a fact sheet. This is how it's going to weigh in on my pocketbook. This is what I'm going to get in return, and you vote, and you cast your vote accordingly.
Some of those things were really over the top. And one of the things that my son noticed was I think they changed the direction of the baseball fields so that the batter is actually hitting the ball out towards the streets. Now, that makes no sense at all, because you would have to put up one of those huge, ugly, ugly high fences so that the balls wouldn't be hitting the traffic as it goes by. 67th Avenue is always full of cars.
I think we did away with that, right? There's no more.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the drainage, everybody agrees with, is necessary, and that's a huge job, that's a major job. But just beefing up dugouts and putting in a few more bleachers, maybe some shade trees here and there in the fields, and the bathroom maybe on this end. That seems to be all of the other structures maybe would need. I mean, the fields were very usable.
One of the things that was included in the agreement, in the design, I'm sorry, I want to use the proper verbiage, was trying to make this park user-friendly to individuals who didn't play baseball. So as part of the components that were included in the design, there's a walking trail and there's some other things, because it's very baseball-oriented, and so if it was going to be something that the community was going to pay for, we wanted more individuals to be able to use it and enjoy it, sort of how we have Veterans Park and Royal Oaks Park, where there's a walking trail, and so it gives more accessibility to more individuals to enjoy. So that's where the component of benches come in, and tree canopy, and just trying to make it, you know, more user-friendly for an more expanded community base, and that has a price tag.
They have a walking trail now, but some partial along 67th and the Miami Lakeway, it's on the pavement, but it continues on the field at Carol.
Right, so the new design has a complete,
And the marina, you know, it'd be nice to have the use of the marina, and that takes a lot of maintenance.
yes, it does. So we included more parking, and there are a lot of components, and aside from the sticker shock, right, the design is beautiful. There are multi-use fields that exist that get swapped over depending on the season, but the design was created in a way where you can have more residents enjoy the park depending on the different activities that they prefer to engage in. Correct.
Yes, I just have a quick question on going on along the lines of the parks. What is the status of the park, the area where there used to be a golf course where Don Shula has all the power lines over?
The par 3.
Yes, I know the town of Miami Lakes acquired it from the Shulas, I believe. No, it's just no. So it's still in the works. Okay, that's why nothing's going on. Okay.
Correct.
Tony, I think when Bonnie was talking, I had a lightning bolt of a thought. She's talking about local businesses and the concession stand and something like that. I wonder if there's any P3 opportunities there to have a local operator maybe defray some of the cost of the concession stand in lieu of rights.
Yeah, currently, currently we're under an agreement with the Optimist Club that gives them the right to operate the concession. So they would be, in essence, under the contract, have the first right to use it. However, we definitely can explore as we get closer, kind of bifurcating that element. That's going to be a decision that can be discussed. If we wanted to look at partnering with a franchise or a franchisee of some sort to support the project.
It's a fundraiser for the Optimist Club, right? And basically what it is, it's a volunteer.
Yep.
They run the Costco. They, buy the things. It's a cash business, and it all goes back into the club. So they'd have to do the cost-benefit analysis to see, is it good that maybe we contract this out and maybe, give up some of the proceeds, but then we don't have to necessarily be manning it all the time, or maybe they'd have more
And
coverage.
they can partner they can also partner with somebody.
Yeah.
So we can all kind of work together and possibly look at some alternatives.
The other thing you mentioned, who mentioned the marina? Did you mention the marina? One of the things during the Father's Day fishing tournament, and I know Tubbs brought this up, we can bring bait vendors out there. It's an underutilized part of and the reality it's underutilized is because there's a dock out there. There needs to be a gate on that dock because if a kid gets out there and drowns, that's an amenity that we have. So, having somebody there that can maybe use that, right, and not necessarily such how can I say, because I know that there's a lot of resistance from the homeowners there of using that as a public marina, right, for docking boats, for using that as a launch for kayak. A lot of people have been talking, Neighborhood Improvement has been talking about that. I know there's been some chatter on social media, but a lot of the neighborhoods there, right, because that's their backyard, they have some issues with that. So really finding the right partner to make that amenity come to life, I think, are other opportunities that we can look at, and maybe it's a fishing partner, right? Somebody that was willing to sell bait and maybe man a little shack there, a bait shack, and I think those are the type of things that we're exploring to kind of. I'll talk to Cody about that.
So I think that's a good segue just for everybody that's here. First and foremost, thank you so much for attending our inaugural open forum and listening session. Talking about parks in July. Parks is going to be here, the Parks Director. That will be one of the topics. So if anybody's interested that's here to come and attend and talk more about the parks issues. And finance and budget, I'm sure that's going to be a great discussion for everyone. So great opportunity to have, again, an open dialogue, just like we did today, kind of in a very non-traditional format, have open dialogue and discussion with your council members. But I do want to commend the department heads that were here tonight, Communications and Carlos Acosta, Claricel with Communications and Carlos with Public Works, and know that they're always available to any of you to reach out, any questions. It doesn't just end here. If you have any other questions from these departments, feel free to reach out. And also, thank you to all the elected officials that were here to have this open dialogue and communication with all of you.
Thank you, Dr. Lopez.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, and I wanna mention something to you, Bonnie. I know you inspired this item, but I am inspired by the opportunity to be here because we rarely get to talk like this, right? We're either up there, we're either responding to something, but when we do, I can tell you one thing. We've had the opportunity to deal with very tough issues like this, right? Whether they be through contract negotiations, right? Whether they be through very contentious budgets. I can tell you that when we listen to each other, and we truly listen, because I think that's the power here. That is why everybody's nodding their head, yes, this is great. Because there's a difference between hearing yourself talk and actively listening to somebody else. I think that's when we're most powerful. And these exercises, right, where we're actively listening to each other, I think helps us as a body as well. So you're not the only benefactor from this. And I want to thank you for being the inspiration behind it. But I think there's an opportunity for us to listen to each other. And I think that's very powerful. And I wanted to thank you for that. Thank you. Hey, we're actively listening. Thank you.